Well, foreign ministers there are also discussing the situation in Gaza at their meeting. Overnight, the Israeli offensive against Hamas continued. Since the 8th of July, 605 Palestinians have died, and according to the Israelis, around 180 Hamas militants have been killed. 27 Israeli soldiers and 2 Israeli civilians have also lost their lives. Well, let's get the latest from our correspondent in Gaza, Yolande Knell. Can you bring us up to date with what's happening at the moment, Yolande?
Well, here in Gaza for the past few hours, we've had an intense aerial bombardment by Israel. We woke up to the sound of airstrikes close to our hotel, and you can hear the drones overhead at the moment. There's also been a lot of shelling off to the east of Gaza City in those neighbourhoods. This is Shajaiya over this way, and also going south from there. We've heard from Palestinian health officials that some 50 Palestinians have been killed since midnight local time across the Gaza Strip. So really the fighting here continuing very intensely as those diplomatic efforts gather pace in Cairo in particular. Of course, Egypt remains a key player here. And we've got the US Secretary of State John Kerry there. He's been meeting officials from the Arab League and also Egyptian officials, and the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has been in Cairo. He's now going to go and meet Israeli officials, and then will make his way to Ramallah to meet Palestinian officials there.
But is there any realistic sign that this fighting is going to stop any time soon while these diplomatic negotiations continue?
Well, certainly on the ground at the moment, it doesn't feel like it. And what Hamas is really insisting on when you speak to Hamas officials here is that their conditions for a truce must be met. They feel that it's just not satisfactory to have a reinstatement of the 2012 Egyptian brokered ceasefire deal, which didn't address underlying issues in this conflict. And what Hamas are demanding at the moment is for the release by Israel of many of their prisoners from Israeli jails. There's been a big roundup of Hamas activists in the weeks prior to this Israeli military offensive, of course. That's what led to this real breakdown again between Hamas and Israel. And Hamas also wants to see an easing of the very tight border restrictions that are imposed on the Gaza Strip by both Israel and also by Egypt. And actually in the past few months, it's been with the change of government in Egypt, this military-backed government, that has really clamped down on Hamas related to its Muslim Brotherhood group, that has led to a deterioration in the quality of life here.
Yolande Knell in Gaza, thank you. Well, I'm joined now by Douglas Murray of the think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and by the Labour MP, Rushanara Ali. Welcome to both of you. Rushanara Ali, is there anything realistically that the West, the European Union, the British government can actually do to solve this conflict?
Well, we need the European Union and including the British government to work together to show leadership and also to act as an honest broker. And what we've seen yet again is that Israel has shown complete disregard for humanitarian issues. Some 600 people are now dead, mainly civilians, 100,000 seeking refuge. And we need the European Union to be a strong voice in recognising, of course, Israel needs to maintain its security, but its reaction and response is not proportionate. And we need the European Union, including the British government, to speak up and work towards resuming peace negotiations, which have been completely elusive over recent years.
How does Israel maintain its security without this sort of violence that escalates?
Well, this sort of violence and the death of so many people, particularly Palestinians, of course there have been casualties on the Israeli side as well, but the vast majority have been Palestinians, won't secure Israel, won't provide long-term security. What we need is the international community to work together. But also, Israel needs to respect international humanitarian law, international law generally, and that's not happening.
Has Israel disregarded humanitarian and international law by going into Gaza in the way they have?
No, not at all. Apart from anything else, the very muted response, and indeed in many cases a very encouraging response for Israel from the international community, is, I think, testament to the fact that it is playing not just by the rules, but by the most stringent rules imaginable. The reason why the casualties exist in the Gaza is obviously because Israel is trying, as an operational objective, to stop Hamas and other jihadist groups from firing rockets into Israel. In order to do that, Israel is carrying out a very, very targeted campaign. Now, it is inevitable in that civilians are going to be killed as well. And one of the reasons why that is happening... Excuse me, if I can just finish. One of the reasons why it's targeted, because they are trying to get the launch pads that the rockets are coming from. Now, one of the reasons why there is a problem from this, of course, is that Hamas has, and incidentally CNN has the tape of this, among others, has been encouraging the people of Gaza to, quote, protect the houses of Hamas commanders, to actually congregate around areas which the Israelis have dropped leaflets and texted civilians to say this area is going to be hit. Hamas has actually tried to maximise the casualties. So that's the first point. As for how this is to be stopped, I think there's a very important thing that we do not, the international community does not simply perpetuate this conflict in trying to stop Israel from achieving the operational objective of stopping the rocket fire. This is the third time now that this has happened.
Well,
and I would suggest...
It's more than the third time,
No, the
actually.
third time there's been this exchange since 2007.
Right. OK. I mean, we'll look at the operation and what actually both sides are hoping to achieve. But, Roshan Ali, you told a demonstration at the weekend that David Cameron had failed to show international leadership. My party is with you and the Labour Friends of Palestine are with you. Do you have Ed Miliband's support for your line on this conflict?
Well, Ed Miliband has made it absolutely clear that the incursion, the ground incursion, he said this only yesterday as well, the ground incursion is not one that is supported. We recognise Israel's demand, as Ed Miliband has said, to for its security, but its response has been disproportionate. And the point about international leadership is, if you look at what David Cameron said in 2010, he described the blockade of Gaza as an open prison. Gazan people are suffering, and what there seems to be a collective amnesia.
Is that the fault of Hamas as well as Israel?
Of course, these groups. The point is that the public, Palestinians are suffering, and the international community has a responsibility to respond to the needs of those people.
I must just ask you, Douglas Murray, on the issue of operations. The last 10 years, there have been a series of ground and air operations by the Israeli Defence Forces on Hamas, and there are at least half a dozen of these. The rockets still continue to come into Israel. So the argument could be, are these Palestinians, innocent Palestinian civilians, losing their lives for nothing? The Israelis are not achieving their aims. The rockets continue from Hamas, and, all right, you are saying that they hide their munitions, their rockets and militant leaders in civilian buildings. But in the end, the Israelis have not stopped the rockets coming in, and more Palestinians are dying.
I mean, anyone interested in bringing peace to the region has to bear in mind the very serious learning curve that Israelis went through when, after the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005, they got not peace from Gaza, but rocket fire, thousands and thousands of rockets. So what they've been trying to do since is to stop the rocket fire. And as I say, since 2007, and when Hamas did a military coup in the Gaza and killed their fellow Palestinians from Fatah and other parties, the Israelis have, on 3 major occasions now, gone in. Now, the problem with this is that the international community tends to allow Israel some weeks in order to achieve the operational objective.
They're going to lose international support, aren't they,
now,
Israel?
The crucial thing, just to add on this, is it is very important that Israel is allowed to win at some point. The international community is quite good at prolonging the conflict precisely by not allowing Israel to achieve its operational objective.
What does a win look like in this case? I mean, can there ever be a military solution to this problem of particularly Gaza and Israel rather than the West Bank and Israel?
It's a platitude, but it happens to be true here. There are going to be no winners here, whatever the outcome. I think that, you know, if I can speak personally, my heart is rather with what Roshanara says. However, I have 2 caveats. One is, I really dislike the tendency, particularly from the media here, always to put Israel in the dock here. The truth of the matter is that the people of Gaza actually voted for Hamas. And they voted knowing what would happen. Hamas has been very clear. It has no intention of making peace with Israel. So actually, you know, this is a horrible, cruel thing to say. This is a result of a democratic outcome. And by the way, the really bigger issue here is Egypt, because that's what's really made the big difference here. So I think...
And Egypt is also worried about being on the border with Gaza.
The peculiar thing is, Israel and Egypt, relative to Gaza, are in exactly the same position right now. Yes. So I think that the notion of the way that we tend to report this, which is it's Israel versus suffering Palestinians is just not right. That's not what this is about.
I mean, Rushanara Ali, what is it that Hamas wants to achieve? I mean, what is it? I mean, Trevor Phillips says that people voted for Hamas as opposed to Fatah, to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. They voted for Hamas knowing that they would be much more hardline. So what is it that they want?
I hope what Trevor's not saying is that by voting for Hamas, those who voted were in some way are now deserve, or the punishment, collective punishment that is now being
It's not collective
espoused.
punishment. That's an outrageous thing to say.
Let me finish.
That's an outrageous thing to
You know
say.
that's not what I'm saying at all.
I very much hope not. But the point is that this cycle of violence is going on and on. The fact is that the Palestinians have lived under occupation, and Gaza
They're not under
has
occupation.
been,
They have their own state.
The
Gaza
that's nonsense.
is a state,
That's nonsense.
and it is run by Hamas, and they had one election,
The point
which, as
is
Trevor said, the
people-
people
there's
voted
been-
for Hamas.
Stop
Hamas then
interrupting.
killed the opposition,
back
and
to
they've
it.
never had an election
All right.
since. But they could have a state.
So
let's
if
have-
they wanted a state, they could have a
Let
state.
Rushanara finish her point. You're saying that they are living under
There seems to
occupation.
be a bit of amnesia here about the history of what's happening in that region, and the fact that Palestinians don't have a state. They have, lived under occupation. They've lived under attack, and what we need is rapidly, in order to secure peace, which is rapidly eluding this
Well, and has
region.
done for
We need the international community. We need leaders in America and
To
European
do
Union to
what
work together to
precisely?
resume negotiations and to, first of all, bring an end to this conflict.
Well,
and
that's-
The end
ceasefire,
of the
which
end
is
of the conflict
costing
will be fastest
lives
brought
every
about
day.
by Hamas being thrown out of the West Bank by the Palestinians of the West Bank, or by any other force available. We've got to remember this. The two-state solution, such as it is, and it's a dream, but it's still a possible dream if you talk about the West
Do
Bank.
the Israelis
What
genuinely believe in that
Yes, I
two-state
think they do, with the
Okay.
West Bank. The thing that is a problem, and is an irreconcilable problem at the moment, is what you do with Hamas, which wants to annihilate the Jewish state and does not want peace. That is a problem.
Nobody-
Certainly
Right.
doesn't.
I mean,
The real problem
Nobody
here
has
is
truck
the
with
agenda is
that.
now being controlled by people who don't want peace, whether it is the
On the-
settlers on the West Bank or it's Hamas.
right.
That's the
Absolutely.
problem.
I can
How do
assure
we
you
wrest
settlers
the
do
agenda
not.
out of the hands of those groups of people who, by the way, are not states?
Yeah.
These are gangs.
Sure,
Let's-
and unfortunately,
let's-
Gaza is run by a gang.
Let's leave it there. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.